and people revealing the magic tricks.
Yeah.
So,
what's that like for you?
Horrible. And I thought, magicians, what do people hate about magicians? We get it right all the time. Then Stephen Fry said no and threatened to arrest us. The thing I rank over intelligence or knowledge is just the gumption to have done things. You might be the best singer in the world. There's millions of them. Get in line. Your value is going to come from what you can create. And also, I have the added pressure that whatever anyone says, I am the person doing it. So ultimately, I'm the one that's going to take the glory, or if it looks rubbish, I'm also going to hit the flack. Series 2, Episode 1, 1.2 million views. I'll give you my 2 main bits of advice for creativity. Number 1.
Ben, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Olly.
How's your week going? How's the start of the year for you?
Good. Nice, busy start to the year. Where are we now? We're recording this in mid-end of Feb. So far, it's good. I'm in the middle of a refurb, doing a lot of live shows, corporate events. You can hear I've got a little bit of a cold this week, but it's not slowing me down. Still
That refurb of yours seems to be quite the experience outside of your professional life.
Yeah, if anyone's thinking about doing a refurb, just don't. Some people love it. I'm ready to get back to normality, and decision fatigue is a real thing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, yeah.
Well, look, I'm excited to have you on the show. You're our first magician, which is quite interesting.
Oh, there we go.
I've actually always been quite interested by, I was going to say people like you, which sounds a bit rude, but
Nice.
I've been interested by the way your brain works and some things you've done, because you've been in the space for a long time, but you still look young and fresh, which is good. But you've also gone into business, and you've actually entered the space that I've been in for 10 years in the agency world, so keen to pick your brains on that. But being a magician, I imagine there's a preconception of maybe how you grew up and what that was like, and were you playing with cards and causing trouble? But what was early life like for you?
Yeah, so everyone always wants like the fun story of how'd you get into magic, and they all expect you to say, oh, my granddad was a magician and it's been passed down through generations. The truth is, in a way, it's quite mundane, but I was really normal family. Like, everything's just, my parents, they work for themselves. I've got a load of uncles, they all work for themselves, all quite entrepreneurial naturally. I was the youngest of 3. My brother's a professional tennis player. My sister is now an accent coach in Hollywood, so that's what she does. And they all kind of left home a little bit, and I was kind of weirdly almost left to my own devices. Yeah. But at school, and this is the main trigger, at school I was an extremely, extremely average kid.
Right.
Painfully average at everything. So, not even bad enough that it was interesting, not even annoying enough to be bullied. Like, just, I wasn't
Really?
the dumbest. I wasn't this. I was just average at everything I tried. My uncle is in the Stereophonics. He's a guitarist.
Right.
So I tried to do music.
Yeah.
Couldn't really do it. Tried to play sport. Very average. So just never stood out. And it was this need for seeing people around me that were always really good at standing out and never being able to.
Right.
And then David Blaine came out on the telly, and it was the late 90s. And for those that are younger than probably 30s, you maybe don't remember when he came out, but he changed magic on TV.
Yeah.
And he came out, and I thought it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And me and a friend of mine thought, wow, let's learn some David Blaine card tricks. And it went from there. And because I was always quite average, I'd always failed at a lot of stuff that I tried.
Right.
So I wasn't actually bothered about trying stuff and failing. And as a magician, you have to fail. So you have to try a trick on somebody, and they tell you it's rubbish and they've seen it.
Yeah.
And then you go away and you work on it and you do that. So I used to just go to school and do magic tricks on all the kids in my year. And slowly I became the magic kid in the year. And from that, it gave me a thing that made me feel a bit special. It made me stand out. And in that little arena, I was the best at something. So I always held on to that. And that's how the bug of it, how I got the addiction of it. And then it just went from there, really.
But that idea, like you mentioned a little bit about trying new things and how there's maybe like didn't work out too hard, etc. Like, magic is very hard to learn, right? Did you find that, or it was more like you found a comfort zone quite quickly?
Yeah. So what most of us have learned a magic trick or two as a kid.
Yeah.
And what you find is most kids learn a magic trick and they're content with that, and then they move on from that. I was just one of these kids that once I got the bug that I could walk into a room of my parents' friends or even any group of kids at school and make them almost like clap and cheer and want a bit more. I just wanted to learn the next trick.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to learn the next trick. So I never found it that hard, because it's like learning an instrument. If you're willing to sit there and put the time in, you'll learn it. But most kids get bored.
Yeah.
Most kids don't want to sit there for 3 hours trying to just do this move over and over again. It's like why most people can play one little riff on a guitar and then they put it down because they get bored. They get their fix and they move on. So for me, yeah, boredom was never a thing. And also, because my brother and sister had kind of moved out a bit by then, I was on my own. We lived in the middle of nowhere. And I always think this is kind of key. I wasn't in a town where I could go and knock on my other mates' houses.
Oh, really?
So often, this is pre-smartphones, pre any of that. Between like Friday and Monday, some days I'd just be on my own for like days. And I was like, well, I might as well sit and entertain. I was so bored.
Yeah.
It just filled the boredom. And I find that's quite interesting on where we are today, on how we are never bored. So bored that you think, I might as well pick up this deck of cards and learn something.
It is so true. I mean, when I was younger, I'm a little bit younger than you, but when I was younger, I did try and learn magic. It was the thing I tried. I tried to play guitar, couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But the magic thing was, it's interesting what you're saying about feeling like you're an average kid, because for me, I was also in that kind of category. I was actually further towards like the useless kid, if I'm honest with you. But the magic stuff was always like, I'm a huge attention seeker, right?
Right.
So for me, it was like,
really, says the guy with his own podcast.
Exactly. But like at that point, you're kind of the magic side of it, at the entertainment and the way to actually find a way to talk to people and like connect with people.
Yes.
Did you find that?
Yeah. So what you find is most magicians all have a similar trait. If you meet an adult magician or even a teenage magician, it's usually the kids that were not the most popular kid in school.
Right.
Because if you're the most popular, you don't need magic as a crutch, because you can walk into a room and talk to people. And what you find is you learn a magic trick, it gives you something to talk about. It becomes a crutch. So magic does attract people that find it usually quite difficult socially.
Yeah.
And then usually you grow up and you can put that aside and you've learnt those skills. And some magicians, even as adults, still feel most comfortable when they are performing a magic trick, because they're just not comfortable socially interacting. So there are common traits that you notice with magicians from that point of view.
You might not know the answer to this question, but you mentioned before about how it's changed now and how you're never not bored in this current world. Do you think that's going to change, like younger magicians coming through now?
I think it changed. So like let's liken it to something we can all relate to, music, right? So back in the day, you would save up your pocket money. You'd wait till a Saturday to get the bus into town, to go to HMV, to buy the album for $14.99, to go home, open it up, look at the artwork and put that CD on. And then you would appreciate that album from start to finish because of all the investment you've just put into that album. And now we just go on Spotify, we press play, and if it doesn't attract us in 30 seconds, we move on. So I think the way in which we appreciate music and albums has changed. So if you look at the way in which I think the next generation of magicians will appreciate magic, I used to have to save my pocket money, drive to the local magic shop on a Friday evening, sit there and sift through all the stuff, go home and do all this, and then sit there and try and read the instructions. And by the time I learned it, I appreciated it. Now, there are essentially Netflix for magic.
Yeah.
You can press play, you can learn it, you can pause it. So, and also you can be distracted because when you're trying to learn the trick, your mates can be phoning you up on Roblox or whatever else it is. So I think the lack of boredom and the more options we have, half the reason was there was nothing to watch on TV at the time. So so all of that we have got that I think will make magic less appealing to certain people, and we aren't as good as sitting in our own boredom. So I think naturally it will become quicker wins. I think the magic will evolve so that you can get quicker outcomes out of it, I would imagine.
Do you think it's slightly dying in the younger magicians coming through, especially in the mass market, right? I mean, respectfully, you're probably one of the youngest magicians I can think of. Do you know what I mean? But like there's obviously TV magicians, we'll obviously come to that in a second, but like there's not that many coming through.
Yeah, so it depends. So if you look at TV always goes in cycles.
Right.
So in any trend, things go hot and then not. So I'd say a good 10 years ago, I was on TV, Dynamo was on TV, Darren Brown. Yeah. It was hot. Yeah. And when TV sniffs something that's going well, it wants more of it. Then it dies off. It has to go away for a few years and come back. So that's what's happened on TV. I think it's going to be... I can't see much TV magic happening again in the near future because TV is so hard to make money now. They need surefire winners. They need guarantee game shows. They need guarantee brands. A magic show is too much of a risk for TV to take.
Yeah.
But if you look on social media, some of the biggest people followed on Facebook are magicians.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest content creators in the world are magicians. So I think social media is probably the perfect home for magic, because you can watch 3 minutes of it, get your little fill and move on. You don't need to sit and watch an hour of it on telly.
Got you.
So I think that's where the next generation is going to be, and I think you will hope. What you need to do is push it to go and see it live. That's the thing, because magic is best live, and like with music, it used to be that musicians were so tight and good at what they did is you'd want to go and see their concert. Now there's a lot of musicians that are coming up in their bedroom that maybe can't deliver in the arenas.
Yeah.
So I think
interesting.
That's the push, is I want to see these social media magicians get people into the live theatres, really.
Yeah, because that's also where the magic happens, if you will.
Yeah.
That's where it happens. So was the dream to be a magician?
No, definitely not. No, like I said, it was a hobby, and I was the magic kid. And then I went to uni, and being at university, having this secret skill that you can pull out at a moment's notice serves you well. So I went into uni to get a proper job, to be a chartered surveyor.
Why?
Why? Because I thought you had to go and get a proper job.
Is it just that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought, oh, property seemed kind of cool. I could, like, I don't know, buy and sell property or something. It sounded like not a proper job.
Yeah.
It sounded quite creative, interesting. Yeah. Then I got made redundant from my job after getting a degree as a chartered surveyor. I was 3 months in. The market shrank 2008. And then I got a sales job, and I loved that. And then I realised, if I'm going to sell anything, why don't I try and sell myself? Because magic is all successful magicians are, like a lot of content creators, or it's all sales and marketing at the end of the day. I've got a thing and I need to get it in front of the right people.
Yeah.
So I decided to quit my job in 2009 and go, well, let's give this magic a full-time go, really. So, yeah.
Was there any plans other than that? Sorry, like that was literally the jump you were taking.
Yeah. So what had happened is, in between, whilst I'd been to university and got proper jobs, I'd always done magic on the side. So you could have booked me for like your private parties, or I used to be a resident magician in the TGI Fridays.
Nice.
So I always knew that magic could pay the bills
in
some way, and I liked it as a little side hustle. And I thought, you know what? I worked it out on like a bit of a piece of paper. I thought, well, at the time, weddings and private parties pay a couple £100 a time. And I thought, well, if I did 4 or 5 of them a week, I could make a living out of this. Yeah. Why not? So I quit my job with that goal of, let's try and do that. And I went to Stratford-upon-Avon to be a street performer. And I thought, well, if I street perform, I can get some money, which, and then from that I could build it up. And that's what I did. And in the Midlands, I ended up doing about 60, 70 weddings a year. So that's all, like, I do just the wedding guide.
Was that important for you, do you think, in terms of like having that kind of repetition early on, like doing the volume?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So everyone, again, you talk about these social media magicians, or something. If I ever meet a young magician, they say, you know, give me some advice. I would work in a TGI Fridays for 6 hours on a Sunday, and 3 hours on a Saturday.
Waiting or
just doing magic.
Right.
So I do 9 hours a week to random strangers that weren't my family, weren't my friends, that would really let you know if they were not impressed. 9 hours a week at 17 years old. So it's 9 hours of just performing every single week. So and also when I went pro, you know, I'd done that many weddings, 60, 70 weddings a year. If you imagine in every wedding, you probably perform 20 little mini shows to all the guests. So I'm performing thousands of mini shows a year. So all of that, I think, where I've, I suppose, had an edge on a lot of my competition is a lot of magicians really think about a trick for ages and they want to get it perfect and they sit in their bedroom trying to perfect it. I just thought, well, I'm just going to try and get it half down, half good, and just take it to as many people as I can as quick as possible. So for me, getting in front of people is just the key, as many as I can, and then I'll get better over time.
Yeah. And that led you to, I was about to say the streets, but it's not exactly like the ghetto, but like that led you to try and be on the streets, to be completely in the wild, if you will, performing to animals.
Because I remember, so I quit my job and I thought, well, I had to pay my bills anyway. So I just thought, again, my parents were market traders. So they've always thought, we will support you, but, you know, you've got to be independent. That was the rule. So I had to find a way to pay my bills as quick as possible. And getting up and driving and standing there and earning money is the quickest way of doing it. And I don't really have any fear of that, because people would walk past you and say some unpleasant words to you and tell you to go away and all that. But it didn't really bother me, because it's not me they're judging. It's just the scenario they're not impressed with, and it's
not personal.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got a story about that kind of the first, I think, time, or the sort of second time you were there, where you made basically no money.
Oh yeah.
But you learned something about people quite quickly.
Yeah. So here is the thing. So when you perform on the street, so I thought I was a good magician, and I was like 22 years old, and I was good. And I stood on the street with my hat on my table, and the first day, I think the biggest crowd I got was about 6 people.
Right.
I couldn't get anyone to stop and talk to me. And I went home, and I was renting a flat in Birmingham, so I had bills, and I made £18 all day. And I thought, there's a big problem here. Yeah. I'm in trouble. And then I realized this kind of light bulb moment, and I still talk about it to this day, is it didn't matter how good I was. It doesn't matter how great I am at this skill. If I cannot get strangers to stop what they're doing and engage with me and connect with me and feel compelled to put their hand in their pocket and give me money, then I was never going to survive. And I think a lot of magicians still don't understand that. They think it's about how good you are. And I think it's a lot, when I talk about sales and marketing, in a lot of skill-based hobbies or pursuits, you think it's about how good you are, but often it's about how you are connecting to your audience. So for me, I went back with that goal of forget how good you are at tricks. That's irrelevant. Can you get these people to stop and want to talk to you? And I developed those skills. And then those skills have enabled me to then flip and change and pivot throughout my career, really.
Yeah. And early days, the creative side of magic, because you're mentioning a few times that you're learning these tricks, you're going to the magic shops, you're getting that, you're testing them out on people, the failure piece and that repetition. But how do you, I'm trying to think about how to phrase this, but how are you putting your own spin, your own feeling when you're in your start of your career where you only know what you're being taught?
Yes.
How does that work?
So, let me give you a bit of behind the scenes. So magicians go to magic shops to buy their tricks, right? I mean, some people know this, but if you compare that to comedy, so a lot of comedians don't like magicians in general, because a comedian, their only value is in the jokes that they can write. Yeah, comedians don't sell their jokes. You can't go into a comedy shop and buy your stand-up act.
Yeah.
So magic is quite an unusual art form like that, because you go, well, hold on, how artistic or creative is it if you're essentially just buying other people's lines, patter, and tricks?
Yeah.
And in answer to your question, at the beginning, you don't worry about being creative.
Right.
In the beginning, you just worry about buying the trick and doing it. And it's a bit like being a musician and doing covers.
Okay, fine.
So just think of it. If I was to say to you on day one of picking up a guitar, write a song, you go, well, actually, no, let's focus on being a wedding band to begin with.
Yeah.
Let's do a load of covers, get confident, just feel confident, and then work on creating something else. So I always think at the beginning, and you notice it as well, is often people get inspired by other magicians. So I was inspired by David Blaine. In the early days, a lot of my patter, a lot of the tricks, a lot of my rhythm was very David Blaine light.
Right.
I would go up to people and go, "Hey, can I show you something? Can you pick a card?" And you notice it with Darren Brown. When Darren Brown came out, lots of people ended up looking and talking and acting like Darren Brown. That's fine to begin with, and then what you have to do is then you find your voice. And
that sounds very difficult to do, though, right? Finding your voice.
Yeah. So what it means really is, if you got into magic, the only difference between, so if we can both go to the same shop and we can both buy the same tricks, the only difference between me and you is me.
Yeah.
So the only way I can slightly create an identity is by doubling down on my views, my lived experience, the things that I like, the things that I don't like, and trying to weave that into these tricks. So let's say, for example, there is a trick where you can guess what somebody is thinking of, let's say. But let's say I'm really into films, or maybe I'm really into the films of Tom Cruise or whatever, I don't know. All of a sudden, I will tweak it and change it to make it fit my character and me. And you might be really into football, and then you end up turning it into a football-based mind-reading trick. And all of a sudden, it's the same trick, but it's gone off on two different ways.
Understand.
So that's what the skill is, trying to take the bare bones of things and trying to make it feel like only you could do them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
What inspired you so much about David Blaine, just out of interest?
So David Blaine. So I always use the analogies of music, because we all know music. It's so relatable, and magic, not everyone knows. Music, every generation has a defining genre change. So, if you have the Beatles preceded Elvis, then after the Beatles, you had proper rock and hard rock. Then you had metal, and then you had in the early 90s, Nirvana came out with grunge music, and then you have rap and hip. Every now and again, someone comes on and just changes a genre.
Yeah.
David Blaine did that for magic. So pre-1997, 1998, most magic was studio-based in shiny floor studios. Paul Daniels was the biggest name we had in the UK. 20 million people would watch his TV special, and he'd be there in a black tie, dinner suit.
Yeah.
And the cameras in the studio facing at him. That was, and he was amazing, and it was all great. David Blaine completely changed that, and things that we take for granted now, he essentially started by saying, right, let's take the cameras out of the studio, let's walk on the streets of New York. I'm going to be as far away looking and sounding as all the other magicians with a t-shirt and jeans.
Yeah.
And instead of having these big illusions and fancy props, I'm just going to have a deck of cards or a couple of coins, and I'm going to stop strangers. But his main thing is he put the camera on them.
Yeah.
So it was no longer about the magician going, ta-da. It was about, look at this person's face, look what's going on in their head. And he made them the characters and the stars. And that street magic genre, we take for granted now because we see it all the time.
Yeah.
That never happened before.
Right.
And I saw that and went, wow, that's so cool. You can go up to people with a deck of cards and a t-shirt. And he was swallowing polos and pulling them out of his neck, or throwing cards at windows. And it just felt so simple and what we call organic, compared to here I am in a studio with cameras and an elephant and an assistant. Just a completely different genre of music.
Was he a kind of figure for you where you were a bit like, if he can do it, anyone can?
Yeah, the barrier to entry is so much lower, right?
Yeah.
Because, Paul Daniels doing a elephant appearance is great, but what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
Whereas David Blaine had a deck of cards that I could go and buy in a shop. So, and also the key of magic is you don't understand what the difference is there. And I used to VHS record his specials and just rewatch them hundreds of times, like with my face next to the screen, trying to see if I could see what he's done.
Really?
And I try and learn it that way.
Yeah.
And then just eventually figure out what he was doing.
I imagine you met him at some point.
I have met Blaine a couple of times, yeah.
What was that experience like for you? It seems like such an important figure for you, and I think it's important to have important figures.
Yeah. I think in my career, people from my, you always go, who's inspired? You got David Blaine was the start. Without him, I wouldn't have had that career. And I'd have thought people who were a bit younger than me, Dynamo's probably done that for another generation of magicians. And then Darren Brown again is a big inspiration. He's incredible at what he's done. And then you've got Penn and Teller, who again. Those three for me are amazing. My experience with him, very, very brief, to be honest. So there's nothing, no juicy story or anything there. However, what I would say about Blaine is obviously all we're doing is tricks, right? There's no secret there.
Yeah.
So he's built a career out of doing stuff that, quote unquote, is real. So when you go and watch his live show that is now in Vegas, he will push a big needle through the palm of his hand. There's no trick there.
No.
He's pushing a needle through his hand. When he once did a bullet catch, he put a metal plate in his mouth and he got somebody to shoot a bullet at his face.
Yeah.
He also swallows liters and liters of kerosene and spits it at a flame, and basically he's breathing fire. These are things that he regurgitates a frog.
Yeah.
He's created an entire repertoire of stuff that only he can do. So that's what I think is really amazing about him. I'm not there going, I'm going to learn the regurgitating a frog trick, whether that's right or wrong from the frog point of view. But he thinks on a different level to most people.
He does. What made you start that YouTube account?
Oh, so So I started a YouTube account called Magic Boy Finds, and it came from, I was doing these weddings day after day.
You look a bit depressed when you said that.
Well, I'll explain where I was at. So I was doing these weddings, and the good thing, I was busy. Like, I'd managed to get myself an actual, I was early mid-20s.
Yeah.
I'd bought a flat, and I was earning a living of doing what I loved. So, like, in theory, you can go, that's success. You're doing what you love, and you're making a living out of it. However, there was a bit of me that started to get a bit annoyed by it, because it's a couple of things. When you're that busy, the only way I could describe that kind of job is, imagine 10 jokes that everybody laughs at. Mm-hmm. And I said to you, great, you're going to go and tell those 10 jokes 100 times today, and then tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after. Everybody's laughing, but you inside are a bit bored, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
the magic for you is gone.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, the challenge had gone, because I knew I could walk to any event and do that, which was so. And some people are very happy with that, and they can do their entire careers like that, and that's great. I was getting a bit restless, and then I looked at what were the options of where I could go next, and I thought, well, I'm currently in the Midlands in Birmingham doing this. What's the pinnacle of what I could do? And it would be get my own telly show.
Yeah,
and I started to try and make inroads and try and knock on doors and figure out how you get a telly show.
Because then, at that point in time, TV was the thing.
It was the thing.
And David done it, and Darren was starting to do it, and whatever.
Yeah, it used to be, we've really got to remember that, one TV spot could change your whole life. If you got the Raw Variety Show 20 years ago, Michael McIntyre went from not being known to 20 million people knew who he was overnight.
Yeah.
Like, it can change your entire life. Can't do that anymore. It's more like a very small shift of the dial rather than these big spikes. So having your own TV show, without talking too crass, could make you a millionaire within 2 months if you got the right show. It was crazy. So for me as a magician, it was like, well, if I'm going to be the best, or if I want to try something, why not try and do that? And I realized no one would give me a TV show, because they were like, well, who are you? We don't know anything about you. So I figured, well, if I try and make videos myself, set up a YouTube channel, at least I've got something to show people at some point. And then I read, and I will always remember this. I was just starting out, and I thought, this is pre-Instagram. Twitter was around, Facebook was around, and YouTube, and that was it.
And YouTube was just starting.
Yeah,
so YouTube's 2008 starting.
Yeah, so this is probably 2012.
Fine. Wow.
So YouTube was there, but it's not nowhere near what it was.
It's still cat videos.
Yeah, and it was things like, back then there was a couple people like Casey Neistat and a few people like that were becoming like YouTubers.
Yeah.
And it was YouTubers was this new thing. And I saw this potential of Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I thought, okay, that's a way of reaching people.
Yeah.
And I got into it, and I read Crush It, Gary Vee's book.
Really?
The first edition of Crush It, which at the time he was just winelibrary.tv.
Yeah.
And I started getting obsessed with winelibrary.tv.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a really random clip. I never would have thought.
Really? Oh no, it was everything, because he basically said in 2010, 2011, I've changed my entire life by making consistent content. And he was the wine library guy.
Yeah.
And then he released his first book, which was Crush It. And he basically said, whatever dream you've got, whatever passion you've got, put it on video, do it consistently, put it up on YouTube at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember even in his book, he said, come up with an idea where you could make 100 episodes and do that. So I came up with this idea to start with, which was just reviewing my favorite ever magic tricks.
Yeah.
So I take really old archive and I just thought, well, I could make 100 episodes of that.
Yeah.
Not many people care that much about it, but I could do it. And then eventually I came up with this idea. And at the same time, one of the biggest shows in the world was Man vs. Food. Do you remember Man vs. Food?
I do.
Adam Richards, Roberts?
Yeah,
Richards?
Adam something.
Richards, Roberts.
Yeah.
Excuse me, someone's going to be going, yeah, so Man vs. Food, right? So that show blew people's minds.
Yeah.
It was one guy trying food challenges week after week, and some weeks he won and some week he lost.
Adam Newman.
No, it was
that
Adam.
I'm
going to say Roberts, Richards, maybe it was. Maybe
it was great content.
Yeah.
No way.
Cheap as hell to make.
Yeah.
And it was sold all over the world.
Yeah.
And what I loved about that show was it didn't matter if the guy succeeded. We just wanted to see his journey.
Interesting.
And I thought, magicians, what do people hate about magicians? We get it right all the time.
Yeah.
We walk in and go, I'm going to guess the film. And you go, well, I know you're going to get it.
Yeah.
What's the point? Or we're always the smartest people in the room. We're never human because we never fail. We're never vulnerable. And I thought, what would be the man versus food of magic? And I had this idea of this challenge of what if I went and also, like, I know that people like celebrities watching magic tricks, which is what David Blaine started up. And I thought, well, we like seeing celebrities react to magic. We like man versus food. It's quite cheap as well. Let's put it all together. What if I went and found celebrities and gave myself 24 hours to find them? And some weeks I'll find them. And if I find them, they get a magic trick and you get to see me find a celebrity. And some weeks will fail. And you don't know until you get to the end of the episode if I'm going to get the celebrity or not. And it was called Magic Boy Finds. And me and my buddy bet me that I couldn't do it. So we tried to do it and we filmed. I mean, my other friend bought a camera and we said, Fern Cotton at the time, who was Radio 1 presenter, we said we got 24 hours to find her. And towards the end of the day, we found her, we literally doorstopped her and said, hey, can I show you a trick? She had no idea what we were doing, but she went, okay. Showed her a trick, filmed it, and put it out on social. Yeah. And it also came from this idea of like 6 degrees of separation. If I tell my community that I'm doing this, does anybody know these people? Or does anybody know somebody that knows somebody that knows them? So the next episode was Michael McIntyre, and we got him to stop his car, and I wound his window down, and I did a trick with his book through his window. And then the third episode was David Hasselhoff. Then Stephen Fry said no and threatened to arrest us.
Did you actually?
Yeah.
You weren't known at this point at all.
No.
You are literally a kid running around.
I'm literally a guy in my 20s with, let's say, 1,000 Facebook friends saying, look, tomorrow, everybody, I want to try and meet David Hasselhoff. Does anyone I know anyone that knows him? And weirdly, you'd get a message halfway through the day going, oh, my friend's working in the same theatre that he's working in. Right. So David Hasselhoff, I got a phone call off a friend that had seen because I was posting live on Facebook every hour. And people was telling me, they were like, I'm at work watching you do this. And it was like a live news feed. And I couldn't fake it. If I failed, everyone knew I'd started.
Yeah. Which is what they want that. But they want to see you succeed as well.
Yeah. And it made the successes more important than the loss.
Yeah.
So David Hasselhoff, a friend of a friend, was working in the theatre where he was doing panto. And she showed David Hasselhoff my page. And he called us up and said, I've got a break in 2 hours. Come over and show me a trick. So we walked in and we gave us like 20 minutes of his time, filmed it, put it out, went there. So we're doing all this.
That's
and then,
crazy.
Yeah, and then I got a bit carried away and decided to fly to LA to find Britney Spears. Mm-hmm. And that was the idea of giving myself a week to find Britney Spears.
And this is still on the YouTube channel?
On my YouTube channel, all self-funded, me paying for my own flights.
And it was growing because you're getting bigger.
Yeah, but right. This is the thing as well. I maybe got like 10,000 views. Yeah. 5,000 views. Nothing, really. Yeah. But every time I did a video, I would send it. So this is all the Gary V thing. Make a video and then distribute it to the people that matter. Mm-hmm. So when I did the Michael McIntyre video, I sent it to his manager and his agent and said, have you seen this video that I've made with your client? Do you want to sign a magician? And then I sent it to ITV and said, have you seen what just happened with this guy? And I sent it. And eventually I got a manager off the back of that.
Wow.
And then off the back of that, the videos, even though I only did like 5,000 views, ended up in the inbox of people at ITV. And they go, oh, this kid's doing something weird. It's an unusual take on a magic show. And then that got us the conversation. So it was never a volume game. I was never trying to...
Strategy. You had a strategy.
It was like show proof of concept and get it to the 10 people that could actually do something with it.
Exactly. So you're on the flight to find Britney?
Yeah, so we went to Britney Spears, and by that point, ITV were keeping an eye and said, okay, well, let's see how you do on this one, and we'll speak in a week. And we gave ourselves a week, and we went to all the restaurants, and this is all like Twitter. So we'd be live on Twitter going, I've just seen Britney Spears walk down the street, and someone would tweet that. You know, all the time, everyone would just tweet. You know?
Yeah, random stuff.
Yeah, and you go, oh, she's at this restaurant, let's go. And we drive around. And I tell all the waiters and all the bar staff in all these Hollywood joints, if you see a celebrity come in, call me, I'm here for a week. And I'll get a phone call from a random person saying, oh, Jamie Foxx and Quentin Tarantino have just come for lunch. So me and my buddy would go around there, wait for them to leave, and I asked them to do a trick to Jamie Foxx and Quentin Tarantino.
I want to just interject for a second, because a moment ago you were the average kid at school learning magic. How did you get the confidence, the drive to go and do that? It feels like there was no hesitation from you.
Yeah, what it comes back from really is my mom and dad are market traders, and they've always said, if you ever want to do something, just do it. No one's going to do it for you. Get it done. And as a result, all of my uncles and all my family pretty much all work for themselves.
Right.
My brother, was a tennis player. My sister did it. So it was very much, if you've got a passion, no one's going to hand it to you. So the only way you're going to turn this thing into a reality is to get off your backside and do it. That was it. And that was been instilled in me from day one. Even like when I was 16, it was like, oh, you want a job? Why don't you go around to all the restaurants and bars and ask if you can do magic there? It was just, well, why not? And they would never, ever, ever judge me about failing. They would judge me if I didn't get off my arse and do something. That was it. My dad's always been like, I don't care what you do, as long as you're giving it 100%, crack on. That's more important to him, the effort, than the outcome.
Did you ever have a problem in the early days of the failure / maybe having to build resilience? Because I imagine, you had Stephen Fry tell you to piss off, but like that's a small element, but there must have been a few in the earlier days, like big barriers in front of you.
Yeah, so there was a big barrier with getting a manager. So I phoned up, I didn't know what I was doing. I just Googled talent managers London, and I called them. I've called like, now I know, like YMU, like people that run that manage the biggest celebrities in the country. And I go, hey, do you want a magician? And every single one of them slammed the phone down on me. And they were like, no. And I tried to, so the first thing I do at all when I'm doing anything is I haven't got a good term for this. And maybe you're similar. I try and pattern spot. So I decided I wanted to be on TV. I made it my goal to figure out that pattern.
Yeah.
How did that person get on TV? What did they do before? So I've got a 7-step plan.
Just reverse engineer it, basically.
Exactly, reverse engineer it. And I speak to musicians. I spoke to a musician about this a while ago, and they said, "Oh, I want to be a commercial musician." I said, "Great. Yeah. Have you analysed the top 50 musicians that have broken through in the last 5 years and worked out their breakthrough story, their origin story? Because there will be trends, and just copy what's been done before." So that was my pattern that I figured out with getting my own TV show. This is not new ground. There is a way to do this. And I worked out early on, one of the chinks in the chain is having a manager that will take you into channels to pitch you to the channels. So without a manager, that was going to be so that was the goal, really. So I was like, well, I just get a manager. But they do not. But managers, right? They want to make sure they're going to make money straight away. I was a risk, and I called all these managers. They all said no. And then this is where networking does help. My uncle was in the Stereophonics, and he still is. He's a guitarist in the Stereophonics, and I was having this conversation with him, and I was mid-20s, early 20s, and I said, "Look, I've phoned everyone. I don't know. I've hit a stumbling block. This was a stumbling block." And he went, "Do you know what?" He goes, "There's a guy that used to work in music that's moved over here. I can get you a meeting.
Yeah,
but you're on your own," because he's And he got me a meeting, and that guy who took the meeting ended up being my manager for 10 years.
Wow.
And he got me to be a CBBC presenter, had a show on Discovery Channel and all these shows. But equally, he could have turned around and gone, it's not for him. So sometimes you need that leverage just to get you in the room. And once I got in the room, I could show him all the work I'd been doing to get up to that point.
Yeah, whereas if you got in the room and you'd done nothing, it would be a 2-minute meeting out the door.
And I also think as well, if I'm a bit older now and I look at young people coming through, the thing that I rank, you hire people, so maybe you have a thought on this. The thing I rank over intelligence or knowledge is just the gumption to have done things.
100%.
It's like the amount of people that
say
CVs. Yeah, it's like the amount of people that say, I want to be in social media. Okay, have you ever managed a social media account? No. Well, there's a million restaurants and local bars on your high street that you could do that for free today, now.
I've always said this, if your entry-level team, junior team, maybe into midweight, senior staff, you want to understand their background, you want to have good reference checking and good CV awareness, but for people who just want a shot, and want to knock on a few doors, the paperwork means nothing. It's about what you've done. And even if you started a Instagram channel for your dog that's got some traction towards it or whatever, a lot of it is just showing that you've got the enthusiasm, because everyone comes in, and I've met so many people, especially younger people, that are like, I'm really passionate about making, you know, for those that don't know, like I run a digital agency. So they come in and say, I'm really passionate about making automotive content. What have you made? Nothing. But I'm passionate about it. That doesn't mean anything, because I started my business when 17 from nothing.
Yeah.
So I've did the thing and learned along the way. So I know you can do it, because if I can do it, anyone can.
And also, when we were doing it, we had to go and buy the kit. Like, we've all got cameras in our pockets now if you've got a smartphone. And you've got so much to learn from it. For me, it's exactly that. So it's very much been my... And funny enough, weirdly where I am now, I'm getting close to 40, I'm about to launch a podcast, and I'm having this same cycle repeat itself. So I'll talk quite openly. The way the podcast market is right now is very much like the TV market. For a big brand or a big podcast distributor to take you on, they need to know you're a dead cert, just like in TV. So they need the big names. So I'm very much at the same stage that I saw myself at 15 years ago, going, hello, I'm over here. Yeah. So I've literally just thought, I've thought, F this. I'm going back to my roots. I'm going to do it all myself. Yeah. I'm going to just going to roll my sleeves up, because I know that I can prove the concept. And once it gets interesting, then people will take the meeting with me. And it's very much that. I'm sick of waiting for people to give me a shot. Definitely. At something.
100%. Without doing the YouTube thing, do you think your career as a magician would have been anywhere near what it is?
Definitely not. Because you need a reason to get in the room and have a talkability. Yeah. And the fact that I could say, I used to call it, you put the term, you didn't use it. I say, I stalk celebrities and show them magic. That got people's interest.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, what? And rather than, I had a meeting with a year before that with a TV person, and I said, I'm really good at exactly what you just described. I went, I'm really good at magic, and I'm really good, and I think I'd be good on TV. And he's like, cool. If something comes up, we'll let you know.
Yeah, this means nothing.
But yeah, and do you know what's really interesting about all of this? And I say this with comedians, with musicians, magicians. I realized the value isn't in the skill, it's in the ideas. So in the early days, I realized nobody in London is sitting there going, let's write a magic show for Ben today. No one's doing that. Yeah. If I want it to happen, I've got to write the idea and make the idea so good, they have to take it. And then by default, I've got a show. Yeah. And I tell you, an inspiration I do take from this is James Corden a lot on this, which I didn't hear this story until after my career, but I can see, he was in a show called Fat Friends, him and Ruth Jones. It's all well documented. And he just said, I'm an overweight character. Nobody's writing roles for me. So if I want to be on telly, I've got to write it myself. Yeah. And I say this to anyone who's creative. If you're a musician or whatever, you might be the best singer in the world. There's millions of them. Get in line. Your value is going to come from what you can create. Yeah. And then that is the gold, I think.
Yeah, completely. So how did you get the TV show?
So we got the TV show by knocking on doors and pitching them this Magic Boy challenge. And I said...
So you've done all the YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
And the Britney thing.
So I remember I got given a development budget from ITV, and they said, go and work with the development team and turn this into an idea. And the idea was this. You've got Dynamo, who's very serious.
He was on TV at the time.
Yeah. And that's what opened the doors for me. Because all TV does is spot a pattern that works and copy it. So TV, Dynamo was doing very good numbers on an obscure channel, which was Watch. So ITV and BBC were going, there's room for magic on a more mainstream channel.
Watch?
On Watch.
Was he?
He broke the whole, Did that
turn into W?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did.
And then it sort of disappeared.
Yes.
Now it doesn't exist.
But the reason why that show got so big is two things. The way they launched that show is they put a load of money into a big stunt, which was him walking on water.
Across the Thames, right?
Yeah. They decided to blow all of their marketing budget on that, and therefore that got loads of attention. The other thing that got him so big is because they didn't have any content on that channel, it was played on loop 24/7. So every single day of the year...
I actually feel like I remember that on like at the 2:00 in the afternoon or something.
Every single day of the year, Dynamo was on telly. Yeah. Now, fast forward to I was on ITV2, they played my 6 episodes and never repeated them. So you think, hold on, what was great about Dynamo's reach is that he was on a small channel 24/7.
That's crazy.
as opposed to on what a big channel wants. So that was quite interesting. Anyway, so we went into ITV and said, well, look, you've got Dynamo, which shows there's an appetite.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do a street show because he's done that really well. Why would we copy that? Darren Brown has done amazing mind stuff. I said, I think there's a gap in the market for a magician that people could watch even if they don't like magic. Because half of the audience, generally magic is male skewed, and a lot of people don't like magic. But if you could watch it even if you didn't like it, which basically means comedy, entertainment, and there happens to be magic, you're appealing to a different market.
Yep.
So that's what we pitched. We were like, let's pitch. So the show we originally pitched it's called Magic Boy Challenge. And every week I'd be given the most obscure challenge.
Right.
I even remember it. It was basically 1 week to find Tom Cruise. That would be the episode. So the episode, and we pitched it. We said, episode 1, I've got a week to find Tom Cruise and show him a magic trick. And wherever he is in the world, we will fly there. If he's on set, we'll try and get on set. We'll film stuff along the way. What a fun, like 40 because it's cut into 40 minutes of entertainment that would be. And at the end, you got me doing a magic trick to Tom Cruise. And the week after, we had a pitch of, the next week is me trying to break America. So in a week, could I get on American TV? And it was all of this big, I like these big challenge ideas because a bit like what Max Fosh is doing now, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
Very much that kind of come with me and man versus food. Some weeks I'll succeed. The big sticking point ITV had, and TV always has this, they go, hold on, we can't invest an hour into you and you don't get him.
They believe in the payoff, don't they? That's the thing in TV. It's always the payoff.
Yeah, and I said, you're thinking about the wrong thing. The payoff is a bonus. It's the journey that's the exciting thing. And then that got kind of rejected, and they said, we like it, you're close. And then we said, well, let's make a pranks then. Let's do celebrity pranks and have fun that way. And then that's what we did. We basically Punk'd was a big prank show. Celebrity pranks using magic, done.
Were you up for the pranking stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, because I
always wondered if it took away from, you're not precious about magic.
Yeah.
You never have been from what I've seen of you publicly, but like, it's always, you've got that enjoyment and that kind of personality to it. But I wondered if the punk side and that kind of pranking element took away from the magic of magic.
Yes. So in hindsight, it affected my brand, because when you watch Dynamo for an hour, he's performing amazing magic for an hour. You want to go see his live show. When you see my show doing pranks, you don't necessarily know what that would be as a live show.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, it blurred the lines. But from my point of view, I liked it because it wasn't just about the tricks.
Right.
I wasn't only valuable when I'm performing magic. It was about writing the ideas, and I just like the idea that you could watch it if you didn't like magic,
because you kind of became an entertainer in that process, like the comedy side of what you do, the sort of more humor side, but also the intelligence, the mystery, etc. Did you find that you had to kind of learn a lot more skills going into that pranking side? Was it different for what you've done in the weddings and the
so the magic is just a part of the scene. Yeah. And actually, what was you talking about, interesting, going way back to the start of my journey, was about how do I get people to engage and connect with me. Pranking is about how do I get you, stranger, to feel something very quickly. So a good prank is you walk into a shop. How do I get you, if I wanted to make you feel annoyed? What if I threw your mobile phone down a drain? Bang, I know I'm going to get emotion out of you. So it's more about how do we get emotions out of people and then play in that space and then change their emotion. But the most interesting thing really as a magic fan is I'd never seen people react to magic that had not known they were watching a magician.
Yeah.
So
true.
So if I say to you, I'm the magician, give me your watch, and I smash it up, this is the bit where the magician makes the watch better, right? If you think you are in a shop and the shop assistant has smashed your watch, and then somehow magically it just appears to come back together, your brain has no answer for that.
It's like when you did the ticket warden thing.
Yeah.
And the woman is still so confused by the whole
Yeah.
thing. She
Yeah.
didn't even realize the magic had happened. It was when you watch. I watched it very recently, obviously in preparation for this, but she didn't even see the trick in some way when she's looking at you, and then you're like, and then she's still going on. I think you spent some time still communicating what was happening.
Yeah, so that was basically, I just dressed up as a parking attendant and just gave people parking tickets that did not deserve parking tickets. You can imagine they were not best pleased. And then the idea was halfway through the conversation, and what is also fun as well, what I really loved about all that, in everyday life, if there's conflict, you normally try and de-escalate, right? Most normal people try and err on the side of being nice and polite.
Yeah.
I got to play and say everything that you shouldn't say.
Mm.
And it was so, for example, in that scenario, her ticket, and I go, it's in the machine now. Not much, computer says, no, not much I can do now. You know, if I go in and try and get your money back, then it's just going to take a bit of my time. I'm busy. And you can, and then eventually you rub the ticket and you shake it and it turns into money and you go, actually, you have the money. It's fine.
Yeah.
So that was always fun. But yeah, she did not know what was going on, which was pretty interesting.
Did you work with a team for that show?
Yeah.
That must have been different from what you're used to of working by yourself. How did you adjust to that?
100%. That is the best learning curve of, imagine, so we're not in a particularly big office right now. I mean, it's bigger on camera, guys. It's a lovely office. We've been in an office like this, literally on a table. There'd be me, 2 other writers and the producer, 4 of us. And it was always so we did 3 series. My favorite part of the process was this.
Yeah.
We'd have 3 weeks to write 115 tricks. And we'd come into an office like this.
So that's for one series, 100 tricks. Wow.
Yeah, and then some of that wouldn't make the edit or whatever.
Yeah.
But the best bit...
That's a lot more than I thought it would be.
Yeah, because if you think you're 6 episodes and you're doing, 20 episodes, 20 tricks an episode type thing.
Yeah, little things to big things.
Yeah. But the best bit was the 3 weeks of us 4 sat around a table going, write an idea, put it on the wall, write an idea, And what's great is creatively, it taught us how to create things quickly. Right. And that muscle I didn't have before that process, and now I have it. So, for example, when I talk about creativity and learning how to do it is a really interesting muscle. And if you're a content creator like you are, you know there are stages to this where a lot of people struggle with creativity. And I find this, I'll give you my 2 main bits of advice with creativity. Number 1 is they try and filter the idea straight away. So a great example of this was Walt Disney used to have 3 rooms that he used to create in. You've probably heard about this. He had 3 different rooms he used to create his ideas in. Room number 1 was the imagination room. Anything in this room was possible. So all the goal was, when you walked into that metaphorical room, was to come up with anything that your imagination can think of. There is forget science, forget anything. Just write it all down. In that process was your imagination. Then, at another appointment, you move it down to a bit more of the editing room, where you start to filter all of those ideas to ones that you're still passionate about. And then the third room was, now let's try and apply a bit of logic and science to see what we can actually achieve.
Yeah.
That, for me, as a mindset, is where 90% of people fail. If I was to talk to you about anything about, let's come up with some ideas, most people come up with an idea and then instantly give me a reason of why that can't happen. And then they come up with another idea and go, oh no, well that can't happen. What you're doing is, every time that's happening, it's like you're driving a car and pulling the handbrake. You're just stopping the flow of ideas.
Yeah.
And you never know where that flow might take you. So I always say, like, we used to have sessions where we never cared about the budget, the logistics, any of it.
Yeah.
And then what I would say something that I was excited about, and then someone else would go, oh, I'm excited about this, and then we go somewhere. And then it would then have 5 iterations, and where we would end up would be nowhere near we started, right? So that was the main thing when it comes to creating. And then the massive thing with collaboration, how do you create a room of a positive vibe where you don't want everyone just to say yes to your ideas and everyone else doesn't get their ideas, right? And it's this concept of, you may have heard of it, but it's big in improv comedy, called yes and. Mm-hmm. You heard of it? Yeah.
Briefly.
Yeah. So yes and is a real simple concept. If we're doing an improv and I pull you up on stage and I say, give me a location, you might say, we're in a library. Now, as an improv comedian, my only rule is yes and. Whatever you say, I have to say yes, and I have to add to it. So if you go, we're in a library, I go, yes, we are. And look what's over there. It's a tiger. And you would say, yes. And look, that you can never say no. So we collaborate with these ideas. That was our kind of rule.
Yeah.
Is if somebody suggests something, even if I think it's the worst idea in the world, I would never say, Ollie, that's rubbish. No, move on.
Did you struggle with that at the start, though?
You do, because you don't know that's the etiquette.
But for you, working by yourself for quite a while,
yes.
Obviously you have the team with the YouTube stuff, but you're very much the creative direction, if you will. They're there to help execute.
Yes, and also I have the added pressure that whatever anyone says, I am the person doing it. So ultimately, I'm the one that's going to take the glory, or if it looks rubbish, I'm also going to hit the flak.
Yeah, or you've got to learn the magic.
Yeah. So, and I got it wrong in the early days, and I remember we had meetings, and I still remember this, where I got my attitude wrong, and somebody pulled me to one side and said, you're not going to get the best out of people if you talk to us like that.
Explain that a little bit more. So
there was a particular day where we brought in a real good friend of mine now, and we hadn't really known each other, and they'd come up with some ideas that I didn't particularly, for whatever reason, maybe I was tired, maybe I was in a bad mood. I just kind of shot them down and went, no, I don't particularly like them. Can we do something else?
Yeah.
And it made them feel like their hours of work has just been put. And I'm also like, why are we going to keep rooting for this guy if this is... Whereas actually, and that was my own immaturity, definitely. Whereas actually what I should have said was, every idea is yes and. So even if I don't like something, let's say you came up with a magic trick. I'm looking at a sofa, and you said, yes, you said, let's do a magic trick with this happens on a sofa. Even if I think that's a ridiculous idea, I can reframe it of going, yes, I like the idea of using furniture, but what if it wasn't a sofa? What if it was a table? And then somebody else might go, oh, what if it was a ladder? What if it was... All of a sudden, we've bypassed your idea, but you still feel included and positive. And that's how we create this yes and culture.
Wow.
So those two things. Don't overfilter your ideas straight away. Just get it all down on paper.
Yeah.
Don't worry if it's a good or bad idea. Create a yes and culture, and then filter and edit in a separate session.
That process of, you did 3 seasons of the show, didn't you? It seems like a lot of work goes into those shows.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily, they do look somewhat effortless in many ways. How hard did you find those shows? Were they pretty easy to do for you, or was it, the creative process sounds great, but actually executing those shows?
Yeah, so that 3 weeks was always my favourite, because it was the 4 of us, and we were just in our own little world. But the whole thing takes about 6 months, start to finish.
For one series?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is where, now let's look at social media. Me and you could make a video today, put it out tomorrow, and it could get 1 million views.
Why was it taking so long? Just for those that want
Just because TV is a slow-moving machine. Yeah. So, if you look at 3 weeks of ideas, another 2 weeks of prep, so you're into 6 or 7 weeks before you've shot anything. And then if you fast forward to the end, you're into another 5 or 6 weeks of the edit. So you're into a few months either side without just the logistical bits. So it just takes time. And there's, when there's 40 people involved, it moves slowly. Whereas this is what I do envy now, and I think where content has to shift. Me and you could pick up our phones or a camera today, go out this afternoon, and I could probably get us 15 minutes of material of that kind of quality anyway. So it's that shift. And also, as a result of that, that's why TV costs so much money to make. And that's what, so those are barriers that TV is really struggling with at the moment.
The first season comes out. What was your feeling? Do you remember the time?
Oh, so I remember the first episode comes out, and it goes back to this thing of, is this going to change my life, right? It's that big a moment. It's a bit like, it's not as big an achievement, but it was like an Olympic athlete winning a gold medal. Like that is your achievement.
Yeah, you've been working 10 years to this point.
And I remember we had a party that night, and like my friend, because it was like live on telly, you're on the telly show. And all I did the whole episode, I had my iPad, was refresh Twitter.
Really?
Because that's real time, and it was trending on Twitter, and I was like, oh, this is good. And 99% of comments were, that was brilliant, that was great. And I was like, oh, we're onto something. Because that is the closest you can do to figure out what the public thinks about a TV show is just watch Twitter. And then you get your overnights the day after, where you get a phone call, usually at lunchtime, telling you your overnights, what you've done. And
the views of the show?
Yeah, your views. And I think, we were aiming for like 500,000, and I think we got like 750. And then you have your cumulative views when it gets replayed. And I think we peaked, our highest one was like Series 2, Episode 1, 1.2 million views in that episode. Wow. So we were doing really well in that sense. But again, there were things that we could have capitalized on in between. But in essence, that's what you do. So yeah, that's good. And then you have that tricky thing that you make the second. You're always worried, are they going to take this away from me? So when's this going to stop? Okay, we've done season 1. Are we going to get season 2? And then they take you out for lunch and go, you can do season 2. And then you do season 2.
Yeah.
And then you worried, are you going to get season 3? And then you do season 3 and they cancel you. And then you worry about something else.
Yeah. Well, let's go back a little bit, because you were mentioning the iPad scrolling. The 1% of comments that maybe weren't great.
Yeah.
How was that for you? Because that must have been the first time. YouTube stuff different in a way.
Yeah.
Because YouTube comments are YouTube comments. Like, it's a different world.
Yeah.
But was it a different feeling for you seeing the public responding to your work?
Yes and no. So things like that, definitely. And you do get it. And you become thick-skinned, because those are the ones you fixate on, and people revealing the magic tricks.
Yeah.
So,
what's that like for you?
Horrible.
Is it?
So someone would say, if someone would screen grab an image, and put it up on Twitter and go, look, you can see in his left hand, you can see this.
Mm.
And then I would go, oh my gosh, you can see it. And I would think that the whole world's seen how the trick's done. But ultimately,
because they were onto something a little bit.
Yeah. And often, it is only so many, it is a trick at the end of the day. But most people don't care, or most people forget. And also, like, it doesn't matter that much. So we always tried to do our best to make sure nothing would leak, and you could never figure out the methods.
Were you getting was there a different level of paranoia, is probably the wrong word, but in terms of the way you were taking that into the other shows and other work, it's a different world, TV, in terms of having that, where people are going, oh, you can see how it's done. Was that making you a bit?
And that's where I was always a slightly tough boss, I suppose, or slightly tough in the, because I go, if I put this up and if I don't particularly love it, or people are just going to slag me off on social media if it's rubbish. So I had to really love every idea, which is difficult as a team, because ultimately, if I didn't love it, then I couldn't. So it was difficult.
Would you not put as much into it if you didn't love it?
Well, it was more that thing that my justification was, if this looks rubbish, 1 million people are going to see me looking rubbish. That's not the same for everyone else on the show.
Yeah.
But then, so that was always a bit of a thing that I had to battle with, that everyone's trying their best to make it the best show it could be.
Because magicians, you are perfectionists.
Yes.
Because you have to be, right?
Yeah.
That is basically the job in many ways.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. That's kind of why I'm asking you quite a bit about this, because that must have been a very big adjustment to go through, to be like, I've got my YouTube show with my mate who's got a camera and we run around stuff.
Yeah.
To like the TV world of kind of, you spent time, you've done the 10,000 hours, you've done the work, you know the technical side, you've built the charisma, talent, you've been on the streets, you've done everything. Now going to TV, where you're trying to transfer that, it's difficult.
Yeah, and also it's made or broken in the edit. Yeah. So me and you could film a trick right now, but if in the edit you were to cut around it loads or use the wrong shot, you as an audience may consciously or subconsciously think that it's a camera trick, or just not resonate with the trick as much.
Right.
So I had to, when I was doing this stuff, and again, my producers probably hated me at the time, because I always wanted to know, when I was filming it, even though we're not editing this for another 3 months, what is the shot we're using at what moment in the trick, so I knew exactly where the edit points were. Hence why even in here where I've coughed and I've given a clip, so I'm used to the edit point. Because ultimately, and I work with people now, when I work with brands and somebody else edits it, and I go back with a page of note and go, well, no, if I borrow your watch and then you cut the camera at any point, you as an audience might think that I've cut out a move, or I've cut something. But if I keep the camera and it does not do a single camera edit, then you've seen that almost like you were there as in the room. And that, as a viewer, is really important.
Yeah. Would you design the tricks around the film?
Yeah, around the edit point. Yeah, around the magic shot. So we'd always call it the magic shot. So if I'm practicing a move where I'm doing a trick to you and I'm making a ring vanish in my hand, I'm extremely aware which shot we will be using in the edit for that. So I'm giving the camera the best view of that and all that. But it's it's a bit of it's annoying because I probably come across as a bit of a bit difficult to work with when I'm asking how it's going to be edited. Whereas most presenters walk on stage, say their lines, and couldn't care less how.
Even like chefs are like, cool. Like it's a bit like whatever other form on TV. It's a bit more like you tell me and I'll adjust a little bit more.
And we actually went out to New York and made a pilot for an American channel.
Oh, really? Around this time?
Yeah. Similar idea, different, but I took my team and we wrote some good stuff and we filmed some good stuff and it was funny what we shot, but it took all the humor out in the edit. And then when they showed it to the channel, it was I think a really poorly edited thing because it wasn't making me laugh. Because thing is with comedy, you can cut the rhythm out of something.
Yeah.
Comedy is all about timing and also enjoying pauses. So if I said to you, sorry, your phone's been destroyed, and you pause for 10 seconds, that's quite fun to see. You're like, but if you cut that out, there's no impact, there's no jeopardy.
There's also natural rhythm that people need, right? There's that kind of like they're expecting it to kind of cut.
Yeah. And Americans watch TV at a different pace to us, and they cut it all out.
Yeah.
So I actually felt like we should have pushed back on that and recut it with an English sense of humor to see if it would have got the commission. But
out of the 3 series, was there a certain part that you loved the most?
That first episode, I think, watching your friends and family watching your first episode of something is like you've done it. You've achieved it. And the first episode ended with this stunt with this caravan went over a cliff, and it was a big stunt, and it got a load of complaints to Ofcom, which I loved. Because if you're getting complaints, you know you're doing something right.
Yeah.
And that stunt was getting talked about on other TV shows. People going, have you seen this prank that's been... So I'll tell you a story about that, right? So
about the caravan?
Yeah. So we did this prank with the caravan over a cliff.
Yeah.
And the idea was we literally sat in the writer's room and went, oh, wouldn't it be funny? I mean, this is how humour has changed. Wouldn't it be funny if a group of celebrities saw their friend go in a caravan and it went over a cliff?
Hilarious.
Yeah. And then you pop up outside of a hay bale and you go, hey, it was just a magic trick. That is the trick where the person vanishes and reappears.
Yeah.
Done totally differently.
Yeah.
So following
quite a difficult trick, to do.
The trick is
it's a standard thing.
It's a standard illusion that's happened forever. You know, right. Someone vanishes from one side of the stage and reappears somewhere else. However, when you don't know it's a magician and you think it's real life, total game
Which
changer.
is the whole premise of the show. Yeah, they don't know you're a magician.
So learning from Dynamo of how he burst onto the scene with this big stunt, I looked at that and went, this could be our big launch pad.
Yeah.
And I said, at the time, so this is early 2012, right? I said, what if we did this with One Direction, who were the biggest thing on the planet?
Yeah.
And I knew if we did that with One Direction, I'd be flown all over the world to talk about. It would be the biggest thing ever. To the point where we inquired with them about booking them, right?
So they've been on the show.
They were huge. They were
because they were 2010, right?
Yeah. So they were like the biggest band on
massive. Yeah.
And I knew. And I spoke to ITV marketing and said, forget all the hundreds of thousands you're going to spend.
Yeah.
Just put it into this moment and that one clip will sell the whole show.
Yeah.
No one bought it. To the point where we inquired and they, I think they wanted 150 grand. And I seriously contemplated getting an extra mortgage on my house.
Really?
Because I knew that 150 grand would pay itself back to me one way or another. Because you'd have the biggest clip on the planet.
You would, yeah. You'd still be a big clip today. You would just be that.
And we didn't do it. And we ended up, and the way this works, it depends on availability and logic and all. And we ended up doing it with the boy band Blue, who were brilliant, and it was amazing. But yeah, and it was incredible. But it was just that moment of, I always thought if we'd have ever got that One Direction clip.
Yeah. Would be crazy.
Anyway,
you mentioned earlier, like after 3 seasons, it was cancelled.
Yeah, well, pretty much. Yeah, it runs its course.
What's that experience like?
It's you kind of always expect it anyway,
right?
And
it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, but you never get the call of like, sorry, it's not happening. Like it's more, we've got another meeting, we've got this. It kind of drags a little bit, but it happened, and that's fine. You feel like it's ran its course.
Did you feel like it ran its course?
I felt that the last series didn't do as well, and again, it goes on its numbers. I felt that we changed things in the 3rd series because we got statistics and information to suggest to change certain things, and we did. And I don't feel those changes helped. I felt we could have gone back and changed it back again and could have got that.
Did you struggle with that process? Because you're trying to, again, you're not the only one in the creative room, right?
Oh, and it's not my money, right?
Yeah.
It's ITV's money. And ultimately, you have to, people are amazing at their jobs. You have to. So there was a bit of that. And at that time as well, I was a big fan. So that point, James Corden was starting to get really big with carpool karaoke. Or was he? Hold on, was he? But it was this idea that.
So 2016.
Yeah, around about.
The trick was 2013, 2016.
Yeah, around about. So, and I was saying to them, what if we clip it all up and put it all out on socials so that people see it and then come back to the show? But they didn't want to do that because that's how they make their money, by people watching the show.
Now look how times have changed.
Yeah. Because it actually lended itself to 4-minute skits really well.
Right. Oh, the way that you've done the show.
Yeah, everything's in 4-minute segments.
So you could have broken it down quite a lot.
Yeah. But no, it's look, things have to run to their end and you have to change. Although now I've got good data to suggest through stuff I'm putting on social media, I still don't think the genre of hidden camera magic pranks is by anywhere near saturated. I think it could, and even now it's been probably 8 years since 8 years since I've been on the TV with it. You've got new celebrities that have come out. You've got new people that haven't seen. I think,
look at like Impractical Jokers, which is obviously different.
Yeah,
but like that series is continued to kind of grow and evolve, even to the point where like they can't do part of it because people know they are.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's still legs in the genre. For
yeah,
sure.
I think there's legs in the genre, and I think there's ways of twisting it and turning it, which would be quite fun. And I like the genre. I like doing things to people when they don't know that they're seeing a magician. I think there's quite a psychology to it.
After that show ended, where did you find yourself?
Where was I? 2016, and then we did a special after that, I think. So we'd set up a production company, me and my manager and one of the writers on the show, a good friend of mine, and we were pitching new shows because we had in the UK the most knowledge of making, or one of the most knowledge of making magic on TV.
Yeah.
And we got a track record of being good at it. So we started pitching new shows left, right, and centre to America, to other places, and we were making pilots and things like that. Really,
was that for you or was that for other people?
Mainly for me, but with casts and different things, because obviously it just made sense that I could be in it if we write it.
Yeah.
But it was the idea of what else could you do around the genre of magic? What else could you do around the idea of hidden camera as well? So we were kind of like hidden camera experts and magic experts. So that created a bunch of shows that we wrote and pitched. All sorts of stuff, really, which we got quite far down the line with a few of them. Yeah. Made pilots for the BBC, made pilots elsewhere, stuff like that.
It's a tough game, right, going through that process.
Yeah, but it is, and it's so layered that you've got to. But here's what it all boils down to, and this is what you got to realize about TV: is for me to have a TV show, there's about 8 people in the UK that have the power to make that happen.
8,
pretty much. You've got BBC One. Maybe BBC Two, BBC, ITV, Channel 4, maybe Channel 5, Sky, maybe a couple others, right?
But so, it's under 20. He's
8, right?
Yeah.
And those 8 people that are in charge of pots of money to make entertainment shows on TV for their channels. If those 8 people all say, we're not really into magic right now, my career's done. I'm out.
Yeah.
And that is the thing I learned towards the end of that process, that I've got a young family, I'm trying to build a career. Of 8 people choosing to give me a job or not, that's a hard go. So that's why pivoting into social, pivoting into something where you've got control of your channels, for me is key.
Having that piece.
Yeah.
During that time, you did the London Palladium thing, right? 2016.
Yeah, live at the Palladium. Yeah.
How was that?
That was great. Live at the Palladium. So Live at the Palladium was a great show. You're at the Palladium, 2,000 people, and we
played it before, no?
I had actually done an internal event at ITV on that stage, but again, iconic stage.
Yeah,
and that is one of my. You have certain highlights in your career. Being on stage at the Palladium is amazing, beautiful, and 2,000 people all got involved in a trick where they all took part in they all had an envelope. They all ripped it up. They all threw it at each other, and that is still one of the best moments.
Building up to those elements, so like the creative process to that versus the TV stuff you spent a bit of time doing, what is the difference of that creative process versus those televised live shows is kind of what I categorized as, that might be incorrect, versus pre-recorded building a series?
So So televised live performances like that, what the producers want is something big and different that's never been done before on those live shows, right? What you should really be doing is stuff you've done a million times.
Oh, right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So, and this is the thing I've learned. A producer will go, what can you do that's different and big? And you'll come up with an idea that you've never done before. And all of a sudden you've got to do it in front of 2,000 people that's going to be on TV, which is an idiot's way of doing it. And I am guilty of this in the past. What you want to do is like what you see good comedians do on these shows, is when they get the call up, they do the best 10 minutes that they've been doing for 2 years.
Yeah.
That they know is so bulletproof that they can do in their sleep.
Yeah.
So that's what I do now is I say, you think you want this, trust me, if I come out with my best stuff and I'm relaxed and it's great, it's all going to work really well. And I feel like that's how you stay really. So weirdly, I ended up doing a show in Italy, which is a big live TV show in Italy, and I don't speak the language, and I ended up, it's their biggest watch show, so calm, so chilled, because I was just doing material I've done hundreds, thousands of times.
Yeah.
And I find that whenever I've tried to do something new on a big occasion, that's when I get really nervous.
You know, it's the bleeding.
Yeah, that one I was, and that I hadn't been doing that trick as long as I should have been doing, really, to do it.
But you're satisfied with.
Yeah, and it's not a live show, so that you've got the luxury of the edit. So you always think as well, worst case scenario, if this is terrible, they might not show it.
They might not.
Or
They might. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When did you start the agency then? Take us to 2020, really.
Pull the pin. So that was post-pandemic. The world had changed. I'd moved on social media, got a couple million followers now on social media. Good friend of mine, one of my best friends called Sam, was working in digital marketing. And my world as a content creator, which is coming up with these great, fun, brilliant, engaging ideas, and his world working with brands that want in return on their investment, was just getting closer together. So he wanted to kind of leave his job and start an agency. I could see that still the world was doing a lot of boring, non-video based content. And all I'd done for 10, 12 years was video based fun content. We said, well, let's smash it together. Let's create an agency where we can create good strategy and quite traditional digital marketing strategy, but underpin it with engaging content. So we started in the pandemic, literally from our kitchen table, and then we built that to 18 staff at its biggest in a really lovely like skyscraper in Birmingham. And then the market shrank a little bit last year, as people know, and then we've gone to about 10 or 11 staff now. And then I sold my shares in that end of the year. So it's just very recently.
Running a business like that.
Yeah.
How did you find it?
So I think a good question is, why did I want to get involved, right? Why would I choose to go from being a magician mucking around to running an actual proper grown-up thing? First of all, it was never my intention to run it day to day. That was always Sam, the MD.
Yeah.
What I wanted, I got to a point in my life where, again, very similar to years before, I was getting a bit bored, right? Yeah. And I just fancied a challenge. I knew that I could do stuff on my own. I've never worked with a team. I've never built a team around me. I've never had anything that exists outside of me. Yeah. So I just wanted that challenge. So that was the motivation. And if money comes from it, great. But ultimately, if I could learn how to be involved in business, that's what I wanted. Sit in board meetings, look at P&Ls, look at all that stuff that I don't have to worry about as a magician. So that was it. It was more of a big learning curve. So yeah, that's why I got involved in it, really. Yeah.
Did you enjoy being a part of the business? Like, once you're in it, you obviously did it for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the creating something that lives outside of you. You create a brand, you create, and all that, and also it's a great way of flexing new muscles, right? It asks you questions like, what's going to make this brand stand out, and looking at how people might find you. It's all the stuff that I kind of use in my own world, sales, marketing, social media, but applying to something new to seeing if it's going to work. Yeah. So no, I loved it, and I loved the challenge. With me was understanding what it's like to be at the top of a tree, running a group of other people, because that's a whole new skill set of who do we hire first, who do we hire second, how do we get them bought into what we're trying to do. Yeah, all of those skills. And also, I'm a bit older now. It's quite nice to focus on people that aren't like growing other people's careers rather than focusing on myself. So yeah, I enjoyed all that really.
Was there a difference between Ben the magician and Ben the business guy?
You have to ask them.
Were you trying to be different at all?
I have noticed I work in a certain way that when you work in a company, you have to, like in any collaboration, you have to be aware what your strengths and your weaknesses are.
Yeah.
When you work on your own for many years, you're less aware about your own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I've realized that my strengths are great strengths, but not everyone shares them. And then I have to be aware of that, I think, which was quite interesting.
Because I imagine things like your creative process.
Yeah.
So making the show and actually having to listen to people, like that skill, which I historically had many struggles with myself for years, and then I finally managed to kind of get it under control a little bit. But having that kind of ability and that learning throughout the process before you get into a team of people and go, right, I'm not the only person that's got a voice here. That's come from way before you went into the business.
Yes, that has. But then I think, interestingly, I suppose what's got me to where I am in my career is coming up with great, big, silly, exciting goals.
Yeah.
Like, let's get a TV show. Let's make that happen. Let's get a show in America. Let's have it. There's that kind of excitement and energy. And then saying, no, this is what's the word? This is going to happen. Like the train is in motion. Let's do it. Yeah. Finding out that sometimes I can't always attack everything with that vigor because other people don't share those same kind of, you have to almost approach it differently and evolve and do it.
No, I know what you mean. It's like you can't just be the energetic train all the time, pushing things forward and not kind of involving others. You've kind of got to bring in that process a little bit.
Yeah, and even with like sales and marketing, like I'm quite a blunt hammer of like even the way I am with my my social media. It's like the way we do social media is we do it really well, unrelentingly, like to the best we can do it, and really consistently, and constantly keep trying to improve it.
Yeah,
that's like a non-negotiable, and it's that kind of just like speed and energy sometimes is a bit exhausting and annoying to some people. I don't know if you get the similar vibe of...
I mean, definitely, I'm the most annoying person in the company for sure. Because I think for me, and this is maybe where we've got some similarities, is like I want to learn quickly and fail very fast. Like that's kind of how I want to go. I want to be pushing it very high. If we're going to do it, let's actually do it. And I'm not saying we all need to work 24 hours a day to do that, but let's keep on driving this forward and not just give up if it gets hard and those sorts of variables, which I think sometimes I'm kind of got the arrogance takes over and you go, oh, you're not trying as hard as me, but then we've got different stakes. We've got different levels of risk.
Yeah. And not everyone works at the same pace. Not everyone's got the same strengths. I've definitely got weaknesses, things like that. So there's those things I think, are quite interesting.
Did you find any new weaknesses when you were running the business with the team or involved in the business?
So, well, I think the obvious one is when you've worked on your own, you don't have to see things from other people's perspectives as much because there aren't as many other perspectives to see things from, right?
Yeah.
When you work with other people for the first time and the team grows and you go, why is somebody thinking or acting like that? You've got to assume that you're not always right, and then they have other opinions and ways of doing it for a reason as well. Yeah. So just taking a step back, I think,
makes a difference.
Yeah, I think so. And that was big learning.
In 2020, you went on Dancing on Ice.
Oh yeah,
that was an experience from what I can see. I'm not a fan of the show. Just for the record, I didn't watch loads of it. Family absolutely obsessed with it, but I didn't see the show. I was like,
fine, you're not the only one.
From what I can tell, that journey was quite interesting for you. You started off not being very good,
yes,
and got pretty further than you maybe expected,
yes,
which seems to be a bit of a reflection of your pure determination in life to see things through.
So here was the. So if you look at the game, how did I game it? I suppose, right? So being a magician, you're always trying to figure out things and figure out the endings and figure out the patterns, right? Like I've said to you before. I figured out I'd probably looking at it's a vote, right? You could be whatever level, but ultimately the public will vote you or won't vote you. So if you're a massive celebrity, you're going to get voted in regardless. So I looked at where I was size of celebrity status, which was lowerish down the roster.
How many celebs are on the show?
Like 10 or 11.
Yeah, it's like that. So, it's like 20.
Yeah, so I was like lower end. Okay, so that's fine. Then skill level will get you through. So I worked out, like I did this calculation. I thought, well, if I work really hard, I reckon I'll get to about week 6 or 7.
Okay.
And I ended up getting to the semi-finals, which was week like 9, and just missed out on the final. So that was cool. But yeah, my view was this, and this is, I suppose, I've never really spoken about this, but I went on that show because my job really doing this is about momentum and profile. That's what it's about. Yep. And it's a great show to be on telly for 10 weeks in a row or for 7 weeks in a row.
Because it's got a massive audience.
Massive audience. Yep. You're working with ITV, and they're like, oh, you're the... And it leads to other things, and it's just a great way to gain momentum. So I was like, cool, that's why I'll do it. So then my thought was, right, if I'm going to do this, I need to be in this for as many weeks as possible.
Yeah.
In my head, and this is where I need to chill out and relax a bit. I was like, for this to be successful, I need to make sure I go as many weeks as I can, because every week is more momentum, and that's better for my career. And it's quite like, because you're always worried that it's all going to get ripped away from you. Like, this is the psychology of it. So as a result, I then just went, right, I can't out celebrity some people. They've got huge audiences. What have I got? What can I control? I'm relatively fit, so I can be as fit and as strong as I've ever been, and I can put in more work than anyone else. And that was literally my view, was how do I try and just outwork my way to more weeks than I should? And that was it. Rightly or wrongly, because again, it makes you sound a bit obsessive. And are you having...
Do you think there's a problem with that?
Yeah, there is. So the problem is this. It's called... oh, gosh. It's like, I think it's I forget it. It's like success anxiety. It's the idea of being ambitious is great, but if you're so ambitious, you're always worried that if you stop for a moment, it's all going to go downhill. It's all going to get taken away from you. So your only way to counter that is to just go 100% all the time. Mm-hmm. That's it. It's like, I can't stop this because I need to keep going. Whereas other people who were part of it were just really relaxed and enjoying themselves and just enjoying the process, which is probably way more healthy. Yeah, so I'm not saying I'm right, but it's just that, but it's always, it's like the negative effect of having a really strong work ethic is you want to work all the time to the detriment of just enjoying it and relaxing. And people around you go, mate, just chill out a little bit. Like that's kind of it, really.
Have you this phrase of work-life balance, which I'm sure you've heard lots about when you had the business and when you involved there, but obviously for you, where you must be doing that all the time. What are your opinions on it?
I think ultimately, what you're trying to achieve, right, and hopefully it's to be happy. So you pick your work-life balance that's going to make you happy. For me, work-life balance. I've got 2 young kids, and I'm very, very, very aware of how few years they're going to be young kids for. So there are many things that I would have worked and done in my early career that I wouldn't do now. Like I wouldn't do cruise ships. I wouldn't travel as much for work. I don't pursue anything in America. I'm not interested in that, which financially, work career-wise, would be the smart moves. Go over to America and break America and do all that. Sure. But work-life balance, I want to go home to my kids and see them and do all that. So for me, work-life balance is important. I also think I'm better at work when I've had time to decompress and I've had the time off. But equally, my wife knows also that if I'm working on something, I could happily sit there and get lost in it till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. Funny. So that kind of stuff, I tend not to overthink it, really. I've worked out all of this BS of I wake up at 5:30 and I journal till 7 and I go to I couldn't care less about any of that. I very rarely set an alarm. I mean, I kind of set an alarm, 7-ish, 7:30. I go to the gym in the morning. If I'm at my desk, I'm never at my desk before 9 a.m. Never. I might be, if I can get to my desk for 9, 10, if I'm at my desk for 10, I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm not beating myself up about all that stuff. But equally, I might sit and work until 7:30, 8 o'clock. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just however your brain and body works,
Because I feel like you've worked very hard hearing you for the last hour, you've worked incredibly hard and done a lot of hours and effort to go into that. So it's interesting to hear your perspective now around getting that balance, which is just what you want. And that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think with this is the work-life balance. People don't understand. A lot of performers get this wrong. is, and I've thought about this multiple times in my career. I've already touched on it. No one's going to hand you anything, especially as a performer. So the reason why I've always, whatever I've done in performing wise, I've always been quite busy at it, is because I'm always working at it. So even on social media, like my social media does quite well because I'm working really hard at it.
Yeah.
And like I do a lot of and I do like a lot of live corporate shows. So people book me for live corporate events because I put a lot of work and energy into it. So even on my days off when I'm at home not performing, I'm always doing something to push it somewhere. And I very much kind of believe that, again, maybe it comes back to the moment I stop, I just think I'm going to get quieter and less busy. So that's why. And on Monday to Friday, I don't want to have a day off, really.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy. And then at the weekends, I'll take a day off and then I'll crack on.
And do your thing.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So what does the future look like for you? Where do you spend your time now?
Who knows? Future. Really interestingly, I met a real cool guy, almost like a life coach type person a few years ago that would talk about 5-year plans. What's your 5-year plan, right?
I hate that question.
Yeah. And I used to have that and be like, because again, you're momentum. You're like, right, I'll do this, I'll do this. Now, I don't even have a 12-month plan, really.
Yeah.
He gave me a really interesting perspective, which is he says he sees his life of like 3 plates spinning. So he has to have like his relationship plate spinning, that as long as he's taking care of that bucket, he'll be fine. His health plate spinning, so as long as he's taking care of that bucket. And then work's plate spinning, where as long as you're being challenged and you're constantly using your brain at work and you feel motivated. So I always think of it like that as a plan, as like keep those things spinning and things will just naturally evolve. That's kind of my at the moment, what am I doing? So my day-to-day is corporates, where I'll go like tonight, or not tomorrow I'm in London, day after I'm in Aberdeen, and then next week I'm in Manchester and somewhere else. So I do a lot of that, which I enjoy. Social media, I think, is more the future than TV. I still think the TV has weight. That box in the corner of the room has prestige to it. So I still will do it. It does have it. If you say to anyone, oh, he's got 1 million followers online, who hasn't these days? Like, there tends to be that. But if you said, oh, he was on Michael McIntyre's show last week on Saturday night, wow.
There's something, yeah.
So there is a big, in my world, there's an anchor to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to launch a podcast coming soon, which is all about creativity, which I'm excited about. And what else? Maybe some more live shows. I'm writing a new live theatre show, which could tour with or without me in it, which is quite interesting. And then I've kind of moved away from Paul the Pin and the marketing. I'm open to. I like the idea of having another business that.
Really?
Yeah, I really like the idea of helping somebody become the MD of a business that they run, and I help from initially, but then have a bit of a longer play. And if that ends up being the thing. I told you before we recorded, beef jerky is my next thing. We were having a chat before we went live. I think the next big thing is beef jerky.
Ben's beef jerky.
You heard Ben's beef jerky. Sign up to my waiting list.
Yeah, exactly.
Have that one, Daniel Priestley. My waiting list for Ben's beef jerky. There you go.
Well, Ben, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and incredibly fascinating the career you've had. I mean, I know you said that you feel a bit older, but to achieve what you have in such a short space of time, and the work you've done is incredible. So thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for telling the stories, because there's something there that I don't think many know. So appreciate it, and good luck with the future.
Cheers, mate.
Enjoy the gigs, and I'm sure we'll see you soon. Cheers, mate.